Sonic the Hedgehog is the fastest thing alive. He runs at the speed of sound and doesn't afraid of anything. Except water. He's the essence of cool, but Sonic Team had to give him a power-up that made him even cooler. So what did they do? They got to work. They brainstormed and with no outside influence or inspiration came up with a dazzling transformation never seen before in fiction. Enter Super Sonic. When Sonic collects all 7 Chaos Emeralds, he undergoes a harrowing transformation. His quills turn gold and raise to the heavens. He attains the power of flight and invulnerability, kinda. Since Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Super Sonic has shown up in the majority of the games. Sometimes it's intense and adrenaline pumping, and other times, it's not so much. So today I wanted to look at the Super Sonic transformations from the 3D games and rank them from worst to best. Let's go. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Z-Man Show. Before we get started, let's go over the rules. I'm only rating the mainline 3D games because they have the most potential for presentation, scale, build-up, all that jazz. I know that there are some awesome 2D supersonic transformations, Advance 3 being one of my favorites, but for simplicity's sake, we're sticking to 3D. Also, this is supersonic transformations, so there's no Excalibur Sonic or Darkspine. 2, we are only ranking narrative-specific cutscene transformations, not in-game playable ones. This means Sonic Forces, Colors, and Lost World won't be discussed because even though Supersonic can technically be attained in the game, it isn't part of the story and doesn't have an actual cutscene showing Sonic transforming. And finally, rule number 3, the transformation scenes are going to be ranked on 3 categories: presentation of the scene, build up to the scene, and all-around badassness of the scene itself. As always, remember this is just my opinion, and it's totally fine to disagree. It's not like I'm gonna hunt you down and change your mind forcefully. So with that out of the way, let's start with the worst 3D supersonic transformation scene. Every transformation on this list has its flaws, and even this one isn't atrocious, but compared to the rest on the list, by default, it's just the worst. After completing all the stages, bosses, and challenges in the game, the Sonics have collected all 7 Chaos Emeralds to open the final door. And who, pray tell, is waiting behind it? Eggman, of course. Eggman's, technically. We find out that after Colors, Eggman just found the Time Eater floating in space. Great writing. But to use its power, he had to use it to go back in time and find his former self so he could use it better. Both Sonics run up to the Time Eater and get slapped away immediately. And while they're down, another hand slaps them onto the ground even harder.
He needs some milk!
Just when all hope is lost, voices call out to them. All of Sonic's friends show up to cheer on their lifeless corpses. The Chaos Emeralds emerge and circle our heroes, raising their limp bodies into the air. They wake up and transform into Supersonics. Then they fly into the screen to transition into one of the worst final bosses ever. The scene takes place in a giant empty room where the Time Eater is just sitting there. Menacingly! It's not terrible or anything, there's like a background, but it's just kind of bland. Most of the scene is them just standing there and talking back and forth until the Sonics run for a second, get slapped, get slammed, and then eventually transform. It's pretty bland, but it fits the rest of the cutscenes of the game. But when we compare it to the rest of the scenes on this list, it falls short by a lot. Sonic Generations is a really good game, at least when it comes to the gameplay. Story-wise though, it doesn't really have much going on. It is the definition of basic. You need to beat all the levels to save the world. You know eventually you're gonna have to fight the Time Eater, and that's about as far as the narrative goes. So when it comes to build-up, there really isn't much. Other than the fact that you know it's gonna happen, that's really all the build-up there is. Yeah, there's nothing really badass in this scene at all. The transformation itself is as basic as can be. It works, but that's about all it does. And that is why Generations gets the worst spot. We all know this one. Solaris has finally been unleashed, and Sonic is the only one who can defeat him. Too bad he dead. But with good friends, 7 Chaos Emeralds, and just a little bit of bestiality, you will believe a hedgehog can come back to life. The gang is hanging out in the void, as you do, after gathering all the Chaos Emeralds from around the distorted reality. Elise prays to the Chaos Emeralds. I didn't know Sonic 06 was a religious game. Then yes, the moment we've all been waiting for. Elise kisses a dead animal on the lips, and that's not only what brings Sonic back to life, but also transforms him into Supersonic. We all know it, it's weird, whatever. But after that, it does get a little cooler. The music starts picking up. Sonic walks towards Shadow and Silver. Reaching out his hands, he shares the Chaos Emerald's power to them, and they too transform. They look into the darkened sky and fly towards Solaris for the final fight. So Sonic's transformation itself is pretty boring. Elise kisses him, there's a flash of light, and he's just standing there. Menacingly! But like I said, it does get cooler right after that. with the musical score getting hyped up, then bringing Shadow and Silver in to make a Super Hedgehog sandwich. In what the transformation scene lacks, the build-up really makes up for it in this case. We all know Sonic 06 is the stain in the underwear of the Sonic series. But I still love the story. A lot of people still love the story. Yes, it has its issues. Yes, it's a little convoluted, but it was so cool to see how serious they tried to go with it. And personally, I'm a sucker for time travel stories, so this one spoke to me even more than usual. You have to play through 3 different stories to get to the final one: Sonic's, Shadow's, and newcomer's Silver. Going through each of their stories taking place at roughly the same time, learning more and more about the overarching background of what's going on, just made the final climax even better, even if it was a little... Only the last half of the transformation scene was badass. The first part was just bad. Or ass.
Nice ass.
Since we are talking about Super Sonic and Super Sonic alone, we're not counting the new form he got in the DLC. That was a new form, that wasn't just Super Sonic, so that doesn't count. Unlike all the games prior, the story in Frontiers actually has you play as Super Sonic multiple times throughout the game, which is really cool and fun. Unfortunately, we're not ranking on cool and fun gameplay, we're ranking the transformation scene, which in Sonic Frontiers is good, but not great. When we see Sonic transform, he's getting ready to fight the Titan on whatever island he's on. He has to reach the Titan, get on top of it, and get the last Chaos Emerald to transform. The first Titan, Giganto, has the most detail put into the transformation, so that's the one we're gonna rate on. Sonic reaches out to the Emerald, absorbs it, then the rest of the Emeralds surround him, lifts him up into the air, he clenches and then transforms. I'm not making fun of that, I just don't really know what to call that move, but he does it, transforms. Normally in the game, that's just where the fight starts. But in the very first transformation, he flies to the front of the Titan, then slowly lowers to face him head on. And that's where the fight begins. You start the scene on top of Giganto, reaching for the final emerald you need to transform. Personally, I think the way Sonic flies up into the air almost instantly looks a bit rushed, doesn't look that good to me, but that's a really small nitpick. And after transforming, flies right in front of Giganto to face him head on. That's pretty cool. The presentation for this one is good. Not amazing, but good. And it's understandable because this isn't the final fight. Since this is going to be happening throughout the game, this transformation isn't treated as a huge moment because it's not. It's a bigger moment, but it's not the moment. It's not the biggest moment in the game. So it makes sense that it's not presented as such. So the build-up for this one isn't very long, because it's the first island of the game. You know you need to be Super Sonic from the first time you meet Giganto, and since finding that out, you do the cyberspace stages, you talk to Amy, and you talk to Sage, and learn a little bit more about what's going on. It's not a bad build-up for what it is, but again, since it's just one of many times you're gonna have to do this, it's not built up to a huge degree. The transformation itself is okay. I wouldn't call the transformation badass, but when Sonic's floating down to meet Giganto head on, that's pretty badass. I like that. In Sonic Heroes, we find out that Metal Sonic has been the one behind everything this whole time. He's transformed himself into Neo Metal Sonic, then transforms into Metal Overlord. To buy time for Team Sonic to go super, Team Rose, Team Dark, and Team Chaotix each fight Metal Overlord, after which you can finally start the final fight. The transformation scene itself is pretty cool. It starts with Metal Overlord turning into Metal Madness, the final boss of the game. We then cut to Team Sonic. They turn to each other, put their hands in the middle, the Chaos Emeralds surround them. Sonic steps back, crosses his arms, and transforms while slowly floating into the air. Then the energy envelops Tails and Knuckles, while not giving them super forms, still powering them up and giving them the ability to fly like Super Sonic. All while the Sonic Heroes theme song plays in the background. Ooh, that's good. The animation here is really good. Remember in the Frontier section where I said it felt like Sonic flying up into the air was a little too fast, almost instant? Well, this scene handles it way better. The floating happens more gradually, which I think gives it a much more epic look. Another thing I can't explain, the way that the energy goes onto Tails, the way they animated it looked really cool. His reaction to initially flinch but then realize it's giving him the power, it flows. I don't know what it is, but I just love that animation. It looks so cool. Then cut to Knuckles just floating there like he doesn't know what's going on. That looked kind of funny, but it doesn't take away from the coolness. All culminating with them flying toward the camera to start the fight, plus it's all happening during a thunderstorm. That's cool. This presentation is top-notch. The story in Sonic Heroes isn't super complex, but it does have some really fun moments, especially with the character interactions throughout the story. And unlike Generations, it does feel like things are happening throughout the story while you move towards that goal, instead of just beat this level, you're at the end. Bye. It's just a good build-up to a final fight. The transformation scene itself is just badass to me. The scene directly afterwards, though...
It's no use.
It's no use!
Why can't I defeat you?
Because We're Sonic Heroes.
But we're not ranking on those, are we? The way the scene was animated, coupled with one of the many masterpieces of Crush 40, I'd say Sonic Heroes' supersonic transformation is quite badass. Chaos has gotten all 7 Chaos Emeralds and has become perfect.
P is for priceless. The look upon your faces.
It's then that Tikal reveals herself to Sonic, telling him he needs to reseal Chaos in the Master Emerald before he can destroy the entire world. But Sonic knows that won't solve the problem forever. Then all of Sonic's friends from the story show up with Chaos Emeralds, because Chaos, after transforming, threw them away because he's an idiot. Sonic uses their positive energy because Chaos only used the negative energy because he's a bad guy, and goes supersonic to fight Perfect Chaos. So graphically, of course, this one's the least impressive, being that it came out in the late 90s on the Dreamcast, but for the time it still looked really cool. Graphics aside though, you're standing before a giant water monster that destroyed the entire city and is bent on total global destruction. It's an apocalypse all around you, and Sonic is the last hope. And we also, for the first time, hear that the Chaos Emeralds have negative and positive energy that can be used. So we get some lore as well. The Emeralds don't circle around Sonic this time, he's just kinda holding them. Oh, and the crowd of what I can only assume are the ghosts of all the dead people in this city cheer Sonic on as he transforms. With Open Your Heart blasting in the background, the light shines and reveals Super Sonic in all his golden glory. Like I said before, of course the graphics are a little dated nowadays, but looking past that, the attitude and the energy of this scene are awesome. We've already talked about this kind of build-up, but this was the first time it was used. You had to complete multiple stories before you could get to this final one. Playing as every single character, seeing different vantage points and different events from different perspectives, showing not only what each character had to go through for themselves, but also seeing flashbacks of the ancient past, learning about just who and what Chaos is and what his motivations were, all leading up to the final story. The build-up to this one is great. Open your heart. I'll leave it at that. We're going to be talking about the transformation for the final boss, because as you might know, Sonic does actually go super in the very first cutscene. This opening is one of the best scenes in any Sonic game, but since it is the opener and happens before you play anything, I don't think it counts for this video. So Sonic and Chip are at the core of the planet in the middle of their fight with Dark Gaia. Chip, having summoned every Gaia temple along with their Chaos Emeralds, formed the Gaia Colossus to fight Dark Gaia toe-to-toe, with Sonic assisting. Eventually though, Dark Gaia envelops the world in darkness, reaching his final form. Seeing this as the final push, the Chaos Emeralds fly from the Gaia Colossus temples to Sonic, circling around him, transforming him into Super Sonic. He then flies ahead of Chip toward Dark Gaia for the final fight. The presentation on this one's fantastic. The story is about the planet being broken apart into pieces, so it's fitting that the final fight takes place at the core of the planet. It's a very cool and ominous setting. Not to mention it's a CGI cutscene, and these were gorgeous. Sonic Unleashed cutscenes are some of the best in the series, specifically the CGI ones, but even the in-engine cutscenes look really good. Luckily though, this supersonic transformation is in the CGI, and boy does it look good. During the scene, you also get to see Dark Gaia's final form take shape, which is nasty but really cool. Growing limbs and more eyes blasting out of his body, not to mention he is enormous compared to Sonic. Then getting a close-up of Sonic looking not angry but determined to kick this thing's ass, right before the Chaos Emeralds get to him and he transforms. The transformation itself is the clench and release kind, whatever you want to call it, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but it works pretty well here, especially having a vocalization from the great Jason Griffith, making it seem like Sonic feels something when he goes super.
Let's do it!
This game's a long one. It's mostly longer because some of the Werehog levels go on a little too long, and the Sun and Moon medals get a little tiresome, but the story is still really entertaining and engaging, especially if you do the side content when you're talking to villagers from around the world. When you do that, this game's world feels extremely lived in, and in my opinion, I still think this is one of the best ways that Sonic's world has ever been portrayed. As for your main companion, Chip, he was always a little cutesy for my taste, but he's still really likable, even to a cynical asshole like me. The bond between Chip and Sonic feels earned, and definitely adds to their determination to defeat Dark Gaia at the end. I always love when Sonic gets serious. It's short, so there's not much to say about the badassness, but it is just badass. And finally, the best supersonic transformation scene. I swear I did have a hard time deciding between this one and Unleashed. But it's me, of course it's gonna be.
Talk about low-budget flights, no blower hookers.
Sonic, Knuckles, and Shadow are at the cannon's core, being told that the Biolizard has used Chaos Control to fuse itself with the Ark to continue its crash course to Earth manually. Sonic and Shadow look at each other, knowing what must be done. They focus their energy, the Chaos Emeralds surround them, and they shoot into the air, transforming as they fly. So we're in the core of the Space Colony Ark, which has been fashioned to replicate the altar of the Master Emerald on Angel Island. You see architectural design reminiscent of the Mystic Ruins from Sonic Adventure 1. The setting alone is sweet. But then we get to the transformation itself. The way Sonic and Shadow focus first to bring the emeralds closer, then both suddenly feeling the energy and flying into the air. Looks really cool. I mean, it's not perfect, but damn is it close. This is one of the most iconic games in the series for a reason, and the story is a big part of that. Once again, you have to complete multiple stories to get to the final one. Only 2 this time though. We've seen the hero side on the traditional save the world from the bad guys story, and we've also seen the dark side, where an evil experiment from the past is awoken, seemingly wanting to help Eggman take over the world, but we soon learn he has a traumatic past, and ulterior motives for helping the Doctor, eventually learning there's way more to the Dark Hedgehog and his Space Colony Ark home that meets the eye. Finally, in the last story, we learn that Gerald Robotnik programmed the Ark to crash into the Earth when all the Chaos Emeralds were collected. Told to us in his last words, before being executed, Sonic and the gang all worked together to get to the core to stop the Chaos Emeralds, with Shadow and Amy staying behind. Shadow because this was part of the plan all along, and Amy stayed behind because if she helped, it would be way too easy. Because of this though, Amy pleads with Shadow to help save the Earth, finally making him remember Maria's true final wish, to give the people of Earth a chance to be happy. This finally changes Shadow's mind, and he rushes to Sonic's side to help take down the Biolizard. The build up to this transformation is second to none. We get more lore about the world, we get a brand new fan favorite character, he realizes he's actually a good guy and teams up with Sonic to save the world. It's near perfection. This is one of, if not the most badass moments in Sonic history. There's a reason why Sonic Movie 3 had the most hype out of any of the movies so far. The same reason they always end Sonic Symphony with Live and Learn. It's an icon, it's a legend, it is the moment. Do you agree with my list? Let me know down in the comments section. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time on The Z-Man Show.